You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and as promised yesterday, I have to talk about the death of Tom Heinsohn. For my money, he is the 38th best player in NBA history. Yes, I have a list. If the name doesn't mean a lot to you, I'm okay with that. Unless you're a Boston Celtics fan, you're probably not going to know him. But this guy was a fantastic player. Corner jumpers. That was Heinsohn. Corner jumper. Killed the Knicks a lot. Then again, everyone killed the Knicks on those Celtics teams. The misfortune that Tom Heinsohn had when people think about those great Celtics is that he played with guys like Bill Russell, John Havlicek, Bob Cousy, Casey Jones, Sam Jones. It takes you a little bit to get to Heinsohn. On any other team, maybe with the exception of Philadelphia, Tom Heinsohn would have been the best player on his team. This is a guy who was good enough to make 6 All-Star teams, 4 All-NBA second teams. He's one of only 4 people to be inducted into the Hall of Fame as both a player and coach. The other 3, Bill Sharman, Lenny Wilkens, and John Wooden. As I said yesterday during my 2020 NBA mock draft with Nick, by the way, big thanks to Nick for being a part of that, sticking through some of the technical issues. I hope you liked them. It took me 4 hours to edit that show. Usually shows take me an hour, hour and a half, somewhere around there to edit. This took me 4 hours. It was over 2 hours long, a lot of technical hiccups. But you know what? As long as you liked it, I don't care. But one of the things I said was that Heinsohn was the Celtics' territorial pick in 1956. And that's true. In that draft, the Celtics also took Bill Russell, 2nd overall. You gotta wonder what the Rochester Royals were smoking when they took Sehugo Green over Russell. And then in the 2nd round, the Celtics took Russell's college teammate, Casey Jones. Heinsohn went to Holy Cross, much like his point guard. Heinsohn was a power forward, Cousy was his point guard. Heinsohn scored more points than Cousy at Holy Cross. Both of them have their numbers retired by the Crusaders. Heinsohn immediately went into a Celtics team that was good, but wasn't great. They had yet to really coalesce. it wasn't until a guy like Russell got there, a guy like Heinsohn, a guy like Casey Jones, that the Celtics started their streak of winning 11 finals in 13 years and making 12 finals in 13 years. In Heinsohn's rookie season, he played in every game. He led the NBA in games played, put up 16.2 points per game, averaged 9.8 rebounds per game, and he made his first All-Star team. Like I said, the Celtics went on to win the NBA Finals that year. They beat the St. Louis Hawks, who were led by guys like Bob Pettit, Ed McCauley, and Slater Martin. But that's not the whole story. That series went 7 games. Back and forth affair. A lot of close games. In Game 7, Heinsohn had one of the greatest Game 7s in sports history. He dropped 37 points and 23 rebounds. Bear in mind, he's a rookie at this point. He has to contend with a guy in Bob Pettit who, the year before, led the NBA in scoring. The Celtics won Game 7, 125 to 123. After that, the Celtics took a step back. They only made the NBA Finals, because that's a bad season, right? The Hawks got their revenge. They beat the Celtics in 6 games. And then for the rest of Heinsohn's career, he was a champion. He played 7 seasons after losing to the Hawks in the NBA Finals. He won a championship every year. The guy played 9 seasons. He made the NBA Finals every single year. He won the NBA Finals every year except his sophomore season. We're never going to see that again. This guy was a double-double threat every night. He averaged over 21 points from the 59-60 season to the 61-62 season. His last 5 seasons in the NBA, he made the All-Star team. So he made a total of 6 All-Star teams. He did win Rookie of the Year in 1957, so he beat Bill Russell. His rookie year, Tom Heinsohn beat out Bill Russell for Rookie of the Year. One of the All-Star games that Heinsohn played in was the 1964 All-Star game. The NBA at this point faced a big threat from their players. They had organized a union, but the league wouldn't recognize it. Now, this All-Star game was the first ever NBA All-Star game to be televised. The NBA at this point wasn't a juggernaut. It was just finding its footing. ABC televised the game, and they said, yeah, we may be interested in televising more games down the line. The players, led by Heinsohn, realized this. They knew the leverage they had. They wanted the league to recognize the NBA Players Association. So the players said, if you don't recognize this union and collectively bargain with us, we're going to strike. The NBA really didn't have much of a choice. They went on to recognize the NBA Players Association, and that ultimately led to free agency being a thing in the NBA. So in a little over a week, when we see big contracts being signed, those guys have Tom Heinsohn to thank. I'll fast forward a little bit to the 69-70 season. Bill Russell, in the 2 years prior, won 2 titles with the Celtics as a player coach. After the 69 title, when they beat the Lakers in 7 games, Russell decided to retire. The Celtics hired Tom Heinsohn. It took Heinsohn a while to get going, but when he found his footing, the Celtics were dominant. In 72-73, they won 68 games. They got upset by the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals that year. The year after that, they took a step back. They only won 56 games, but they went on to beat the Knicks in the 74 Eastern Conference Finals and beat the Bucks in 7 games to win the NBA championship. The year after that, another 60-win season, Eastern Conference Finals exit, 75-76, the Celtics only won 54 games, but doesn't matter much, since they went on to beat the Phoenix Suns in 6 games in the NBA Finals. Between the end of his playing career and the beginning of his coaching career, he was a Celtics broadcaster. He called games on the radio for him. After the 77-78 season, when the Celtics really started to regress, they got off to an 11-23 start. Heinsohn was fired. He got back into broadcasting. Him and Mike Gorman were fantastic together. Sometimes Bob Cousy would show up. Heinsohn was really funny behind the microphone. Had a great sense of humor. He was a homer. Obviously, that's to be expected. He liked to recognize guys who hustled, because that's what Heinsohn did as a player. He hustled. He never took a game off. He called some March Madness games. He called some NBA Finals games. He is the only person in Celtics history to be involved in an official team capacity for all of their championships and all of their finals appearances. Thank you, Wikipedia, for that. I didn't realize that. Every accolade that Tom Heinsohn ever got, he deserved. Criminally underrated. Like I said, I'm sitting underneath a basketball signed by him, Red Auerbach, Casey Jones, Frank Ramsey, Jim Luskatorf, Gene Conley, and a bunch of other Celtics. I actually turned it the other day so that way Heinsohn's autograph would be prominently displayed. He died on Tuesday at the age of 86. May he rest in peace. Moving on now to the Thunder making a very surprising hire as to who's going to be their next head coach. Mark Daigneault. Not Daigneault. He pronounces it Daigneault, according to Wikipedia. I mean, it's from Massachusetts, so it makes sense, but still, that's a French name. Whatever, if that's how he pronounces it, I'll honor it. It's easier to pronounce anyway. Mark Daigneault is the new head coach of the Thunder. This is so far out of left field. We're in the left field parking lot right now. The bulk of his experience came with the Oklahoma City Blue, the Thunder's G League team. Now, when Daigneault was there, the Blue were successful. They made the playoffs in 4 of his 5 seasons. He never won a G League title, but his last 3 years coaching the Blue, they won their division. Last year, Daigneault made the jump to the NBA. Billy Donovan named him as one of his assistants. Him and Donovan knew each other from their time at Florida, when Donovan was a head coach. Daigneault was a graduate manager and an assistant to Donovan. And I feel like that's important. Billy Donovan did a great job with the Thunder. I said it yesterday. They overachieved the most out of any NBA team. Everyone expected them to be god-awful. They made the playoffs. I feel like Donovan left partially because he can see the writing on the wall. The Thunder have a lot of holes. They're not built for long-term success. Even if Shea turns into one of the best players in the NBA, which I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to turn into a really, really good, maybe great player, but not in that upper echelon. But let's say he does, for argument's sake. Who's helping him? Steven Adams? He's solid, but he's not great. Gallinari's a free agent. Diallo, Ferguson, Basley, they're all good players. They're not great. It's going to be tough sledding for the Thunder soon. Donovan saw that. He didn't want to be a part of it. I don't blame him. So they hired a guy who's probably going to be very similar to Donovan, and someone who's willing to take on the role of rebuilding a team that's going to be garbage for a while. I don't think the Thunder are going back into the playoffs. Donovan went to the Bulls. It wouldn't stun me if in a year or two the Bulls snuck into the playoffs. Look, this is an out-of-the-box hire. The casual NBA fan isn't going to know anything about Daigneault, but you take a look at some of the other guys who they were interviewing: David Vanterpool, Adrian Griffin, Will Hardy, Brian Keefe, Will Weaver, and Charles Lee. Thank you, HoopsRumors.com, for putting all that information on one page. Daigneault may have been the best option. There's logic to promoting a guy who's gonna have the same philosophy as the guy who just left. If that guy did a good job, yeah. Don't reinvent the wheel. You want to tell me that the Thunder should have gone after bigger names? Okay, fine. I'm with you there. But out of the guys that they went after, Daigneault was probably the best choice. There were better candidates available. In the grand scheme of things, there's no question about that. But this is a solid hire. Speaking of the Thunder, the guy who they traded last year wants to be traded again. According to Shams Charania of The Athletic, Russell Westbrook wants out of Houston. I have been critical of Westbrook in the past. I don't think you can win with him on your roster, and I stand by that. I don't think the way that Westbrook plays is conducive to winning a title. Shams said that Westbrook wants to join a team where he can be the lead dog. We've seen Westbrook be the lead dog. The Thunder didn't come anywhere close to an NBA title after Durant left. Did they make the playoffs? Yes. Russell Westbrook can be the best player on a playoff team, but if that team wants to win an NBA title, get him off the team. The guy only cares about one thing, his stats. When you watch him play, you can see it clear as day. Now, I will say, I don't begrudge him for wanting out. The Rockets are going to go in a new direction here. Tillman Fertitta has lost a lot of money during this pandemic. The guy owns Landry's, which is a big player in the restaurant, entertainment, and hospitality field. Those businesses are suffering right now. Less people are going out to eat. The entertainment world has been shut down. You don't have as many people gambling. Fertitta has lost a lot of money during this pandemic. Now, I'm not saying he's broke or anything, but he may not have the money to pay a guy like Westbrook or to pay a guy like Harden. The Rockets getting rid of D'Antoni and Morey and going in that new direction may be more of a fiscal decision than a basketball decision. Now, those two things can coincide. I have no problem with the Rockets trading Westbrook. Again, I don't like Westbrook. And James Harden is on a massive contract right now. There are rumors that he's not happy with the direction of the team. But what is he upset about? That's what's really important here. Is he upset about the roster that Morey put together and the playing style that D'Antoni runs? Or is he concerned that the Rockets are gonna cut payroll? This isn't the first time that we've heard about the Rockets maybe cutting payroll. I've seen Eric Gordon's name mentioned in trade rumors. We've seen Westbrook's name in trade rumors before. If it's a basketball decision to get rid of Westbrook, why trade for him in the first place? Do you remember what the Rockets gave up to get Westbrook? Chris Paul and control of 4 first-rounders. Now, a year later, you decide it doesn't work? If that's a basketball decision, then there was a big disconnect between Tillman Fertitta and Daryl Morey. Again, I'll say this. If it's motivated by money, if you want to go in a different direction because of money, and that different direction involves trading Russell Westbrook and reinventing the roster that you have around James Harden, I'm okay with that. This roster cannot win an NBA title. There is no way on this earth that this Rockets roster, as currently constructed, is going to win an NBA title. But James Harden needs to stay a Rocket. Don't tell me you've lost a ton of money, so you have to trade James Harden. That doesn't work for me. You're a billionaire. You have a show called Billion Dollar Buyer. Actually, I don't know if you still have it. I never watched it. If you want to trade Westbrook, that's fine. In fact, I'm okay with you trading everyone except James Harden. You can't trade Harden. The guy's one of the best players in the NBA. As for where Westbrook is going to go, the Knicks have been mentioned a lot. And I gotta tell ya, it'd be such a typical Knicks move. A big name to get the fans excited. You're not going to do much with him, but you may sneak into the playoffs. In this weak Eastern Conference, would a Russell Westbrook-led Knicks team really stun you if they snuck into the playoffs as an 8 seed? I mean, it depends on what the Knicks have to give up to get him. See, the thing with a Knicks trade for Westbrook is, if they give up some of their lesser pieces, a guy like Randall or Knox, along with some other pieces, that can work. But you can't trade Barrett. You can't trade Robinson. Those guys are untouchable. And you've got to be wary about trading a bunch of picks to get Westbrook. Again, what's the point of trading all those picks just to maybe sneak into the playoffs? I understand that the Knicks have been a laughingstock for years. So if you sneak into the playoffs, you can get some goodwill from your fans a little bit. Hey, look, we're in the playoffs. You know, Westbrook is mentoring RJ Barrett, and Mitchell Robinson has turned into one of the best centers in the NBA. And we added some other piece in free agency. See, we're headed in the right direction. But what does that get you long term? You're not going to win a title with Westbrook. I don't care who you pair him with in free agency. Montrezl Harrell, Fred VanVleet. It's not going to work. Short term, it makes sense for the Knicks. But the Knicks can't think short term. They have to think long term. Quite frankly, I was a little surprised that Nick was okay with trading for Westbrook. He keeps his distance from the Knicks, but he's still a Knicks fan. I mean, I understand his point. The energy that Westbrook plays with, he'd get the fans excited. And you want some of that to rub off on a guy like Barrett and a guy like Robinson. I get that. But doesn't this strike you as another Melo trade? Another McDice trade? You have to be careful if you're the Knicks in trading for Westbrook. Don't give up too much. I'd be really hesitant to give more than one first rounder for Westbrook. I don't think the Rockets would do it for just one first. And if you don't get Westbrook, if you're the Knicks, that's okay. It's not do or die. You're nowhere near making the playoffs. Some people brought up the other New York team, the number 1 New York team, my beloved Nets. And yes, they are the kings of New York basketball right now. And I'll say this, again, as a diehard Nets fan. No, absolutely not. I do not want Russell Westbrook. I wouldn't touch him with a 50-foot pole. Him and Durant didn't get along in OKC. Him and Kyrie Irving would kill each other. You can't win with Westbrook. We've established that. No. Absolutely not. No. I'll take the other Rockets guard. I'll take James Harden in a heartbeat. Alright, I understand that the Nets need to trade for a third star, but that star can't be Russell Westbrook. That is going to implode. Steve Nash will not be able to deal with that. I don't know where Westbrook's going to end up. Definitely not the Nets. I don't see Marks doing that. The Knicks? Possibly. The Clippers? That'd make sense, but how are you going to make that money work? Are you going to trade Paul George? You're going to trade George for Westbrook? It's an interesting idea. I don't hate it. I don't hate the idea of Westbrook and Leonard playing together. And I don't hate the idea of Harden and George playing together. It's interesting food for thought, I'll tell you that. The Heat make some sense, but do you want to trade Tyler Hero for him? Do you want to trade Kendrick Nunn for him? Again, you can't win with Westbrook. You were the second best team in the NBA last year. That's a risky bet. I have no idea where Westbrook's going to end up. But I'll tell you, in less than a week, I think things are going to get crazy in the NBA. These GMs have had a lot of time to talk to each other. I think you're going to see some blockbuster trades. Alright, now I'll give you some Valk talk about the Thursday night game tonight, Colts versus Titans. And I've been critical of the Colts in the past. I don't think they're as good as their record indicates. When I've watched them play, I haven't been overly impressed with them. But they still have some talent. Phillip Rivers has shown that he can still get it done. He's not the all-pro that he was with the Chargers anymore, but he's still solid. He can still get the job done. He has some solid weapons to throw to. Zach Pascal and T.Y. Hilton are good receivers. Michael Pittman is a young up-and-comer. And Marcus Johnson has some talent. But one thing that is worth noting, Mo Alley Cox is questionable for this game, and Jack Doyle is out. So that means that Trey Burton is probably going to start for the Colts. I don't like Trey Burton that much. I don't think he's that good. And Phillip Rivers does like using his tight ends. All those years with Antonio Gates rubbed off on him. The Colts' running game is non-existent. Jonathan Taylor has not had a good rookie season. He's averaging less than 4 yards a carry. He only has 52 yards per game. And it's not because he doesn't have a good offensive line in front of him. The Colts probably have the best offensive line in the NFL. Anthony Costanzo, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Mark Lewinsky, and Braden Smith. You can't get much better than that. Defensively, though, the Colts aren't that great. I understand they have DeForest Buckner, they have Darius Leonard, they have Xavier Rhodes. 3 great players. But after that, it falls off a cliff. I mean, you have one guy on the D-line who scares me, one linebacker who scares me, and one guy in the secondary who scares me. There are 8 other guys that Ryan Tannehill's gonna go up against. That defense should scare you if you're a Colts fan. As for the Titans, like I said, Ryan Tannehill is leading the charge for him. Well, it's really Derrick Henry, but still, Tannehill's the quarterback. This guy is having a great season. He's completed over 65% of his passes. He's thrown for just under 250 yards per game, 19 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He's only lost 1 fumble. What Arthur Smith has done with him is nothing short of incredible. I said this last year. Arthur Smith is going to be a hot commodity when the head coaching market opens up. And like I said, Derrick Henry is the best player on the Titans. He's averaging over 4.5 yards per carry. The Titans have played 8 games this season. Henry has 8 touchdowns. He's averaged over 100 yards per game. As it stands right now, he may be the best running back in the NFL. Tannehill also has some talented guys to throw the ball to. A.J. Brown is one of the best young wide receivers in the NFL. Corey Davis is finally coming into his own. Jonnu Smith is a very talented tight end. So is Anthony Firkser. Khalif Raymond has some talent. And the funny thing about this Titans offense, they don't have a great offensive line. Taylor Lewan got hurt early, so that's pushed Ty Sambrailo into starting. Sambrailo has not been that good. And you combine him with Dennis Kelly and Nate Davis, that's not a good offensive line. Roger Saffold and Ben Jones are good, but they're not great. It's really amazing when you stop and think about it, what Tannehill and Henry have been able to do playing behind this subpar offensive line. Defensively, the Titans have some good players, but it hasn't shown up in the stats. I like Jeffrey Simmons a lot. Jadeveon Clowney has had an underwhelming season, but according to Pro Football Focus, he has a 75.3 overall grade. He doesn't have a sack, but he's still doing his job. You also need to look out for Daquan Jones, Harold Landry, Malcolm Butler, Jayon Brown, Kevin Byard, and Jonathan Joseph. But I'll tell you, Mike Vrabel deserves a ton of questions for why this defense hasn't coalesced the way it should. 23rd in total yards allowed per game, 27th in passing yards allowed per game, and they're dead last in the NFL in third down percentage when you look at their defense. Now, interestingly, the Colts are 28th in third down percentage on offense. So something's going to give here. It's going to be interesting to see who steps up on third down. The Colts offense or the Titans defense. All in all, I have more faith in the Titans players than I do the Colts players. It's at Tennessee. Give me the Titans. Alright, now I'll give you some baseball Valk talk. Specifically, a couple pitchers accepting their qualifying offers. The first guy to talk about is Marcus Stroman. If you'll recall, he opted out of this past season because of COVID-19 concerns. Fair decision. I didn't begrudge him for it. Mets fans were upset because they gave up a lot to get him, and it seemed like all they were going to get from him was 11 meaningless starts in 2019. But no, Stroman accepted the Mets' $18.9 million qualifying offer. This is really good for the Mets. Stroman is a good pitcher in this league. He's not great, but he's good. You put him in a rotation anchored by Jacob deGrom, and you have David Peterson behind Stroman. You've got the makings of a solid rotation there. Now, the Mets are going to need to flesh that out more. I don't want Seth Lugo starting. Steven Matz was absolutely dreadful last year. Gesellman was dreadful. Porcello was dreadful. Waka was dreadful. There's a reason that Trevor Bauer has been linked to the Mets so heavily. I don't think Bauer would work well in New York, but I understand why some Mets fans are calling for him. This is a great situation for the Mets. As for Stroman's end of things, this is going to be a depressed free agent market. Outside of guys like Springer, Realmuto, Bauer, and LeMahieu, I don't see anyone getting a big contract. Realize, the owners lost a lot of money this year. It's going to be hard enough for them to find the money to sign any one of those four guys. A good but not great pitcher in Stroman? You're not going to get a huge contract. It's the right decision by Stroman to accept the qualifying offer. The Mets just need to solidify their rotation further. Moving on now to Kevin Gausman accepting his qualifying offer. And this one was a little more surprising because I thought Gausman could have gotten more than $18.9 million on the open market. Not annually, just total. Stroman, you have no idea how him opting out was going to affect his market. But Gausman had a good season last year for the Giants. He went 3-3 with a 3.62 ERA. He's shown that he can hang in the AL East. I understand he hit a rough patch in 2019. It didn't work out long-term with the Braves. And with the Reds, he wasn't exactly Rob Dibble coming out of their bullpen. But I thought his stock went up enough that he could have gotten more than $18.9 million. Evidently not. It's fantastic for the Giants to get him back. Maybe a little under $19 million is more than you want to pay him in a perfect world. But he was your best pitcher last year, so beggars can't be choosers. The Giants just need to add about 4 more starters in addition to Gausman. Johnny Cueto has been dreadful. Tyler Anderson has been dreadful. Logan Webb doesn't seem to be working out. Drew Smyly and Trevor Cahill aren't long-term answers. But this move does shore up 20% of their starting rotation. Here's hoping that Farhan Zaidi can reinforce it further. Also, get rid of Gabe Kapler. He's terrible. Moving on now to the Braves, bringing back Josh Tomlin for 1 year at $1 million. He does have a club option for the 2022 season with a $250,000 buyout. If the Braves exercise it, they'll owe him $1.25 million. So technically, this guarantees Tomlin $1.25 million. Tomlin has been up and down his whole career. 1 year he seems to be putting it all together, then he falls flat. Then he has a renaissance, then he falls flat. For the past couple seasons, the Braves have used him out of their bullpen. In 2019, he was good. He went 2-1 with a 3.74 ERA. But last year, he went 2-2 with a 4.76 ERA. Like I said, he's really streaky. This contract is fair for him. If you trust that he can regain his 2019 form, I'm okay with that. And even if he doesn't, it's not a ton of money. And the Braves had a really good bullpen last year. Mark Melancon, Tyler Matzek, Shane Green, AJ Minter, Grant Dayton, Chris Martin, and Darren O'Day. So if Tomlin falls flat, they won't lose too much in terms of bullpen depth. Moving on now to the Angels hiring Perry Manassian to be their new GM. And this was to be expected. If you were reading the recent reports, you could tell that it was trending in this direction. The Angels went through an exhaustive search to find Manassian. They had a list of 20 guys that they went through. Then they narrowed it down to 5. And now just the one in Manassian. So you gotta give Artie Moreno credit for being thorough. Manassian was formerly the Braves' assistant GM. Him and Alex Anthopoulos led the Braves after John Coppolella was banned from baseball. And obviously it's been more Anthopoulos than Manassian, but Anthopoulos trusts Manassian. They work together well with the Blue Jays, and the Braves have turned into one of the best teams in baseball. I mean, they were 1 win away from winning the pennant. Manassian needs to win sooner rather than later. Mike Trout is in the prime of his career. If he doesn't win a World Series, it will be just as bad as Ted Williams and Barry Bonds never winning a World Series. He's got to reinforce their lineup. They had a lot of bad seasons from a lot of people who they thought would contribute for him. Guys like Luis Rengifo, Justin Upton, Joe Adele, and Shohei Ohtani all had bad years. Albert Pujols too. I'm not saying they're bad players, they just had bad seasons. He could also stand to fortify their pitching. They have some solid pitchers, guys like Dylan Bundy, Griffin Canning, and Jaime Barria. And the bullpen is solid. Guys like Mike Mayers, Felix Pena, Noe Ramirez, and Cam Bedrosian are solid players. But again, those are a few eggs short of a dozen. Minasian can certainly win a World Series with the Angels. He has the smarts necessary to get the Angels what they need. But he's got to hit the ground running. There's no way around it. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that my foot hasn't been sore for 6 weeks. It's been longer, maybe a month and a half.